Here's another one that coming in hard and off the card. And we're going to get into this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Monaco, welcome.
Thank you.
You have a very important job. You're the number 2 person in the Department of Justice. Every U.S. attorney reports to you. The U.S. Marshals report to you. You are responsible for day-to-day operations of the Department of Justice, and in particular, the criminal justice aspects of the Department of Justice. Is all of that correct?
That's correct.
It is unfortunate, Ms. Monaco, that as you look back over the last 2.5 years, this Department of Justice, I believe, has been the most partisan Department of Justice we've ever seen. And that is directly contrary to the mission of DOJ. DOJ is meant to be nonpartisan. It is meant to enforce the law, regardless of party. I had hopes that Merrick Garland would actually do that when he was confirmed. Those hopes have been shattered. You have been a loyal deputy, standing alongside that partisan corruption of Department of Justice. You have been willing to devote massive resources to targeting individuals that are perceived to be political opponents of the White House. And you have been willing to devote 0 resources to protecting individuals who are perceived to be political opponents of the White House. I want to ask you about a statute you've been asked about already, 18 U.S.C. 1507. You're familiar with this statute?
Yes.
It's a criminal statute that says whoever with the intent of influencing any judge pickets or parades in or near a building or residences occupied or used by such judge shall be fined or imprisoned under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. Now, the entire country has seen hundreds of protesters outside the homes of Supreme Court justices night after night after night. You turn on your TV and you see violations of this criminal statute over and over and over again. How many prosecutions has DOJ brought under 18 U.S.C. Section 1507 under your leadership?
There have been no prosecutions under 1507. We're pursuing an attempted murder case against an individual.
0 is the answer.
Justice Kavanaugh.
I'm quite aware, and you're responsible for that, allowing these protests night after night after night. The violent threat of homicide of the individual who traveled across the country attempting to murder a Supreme Court justice, that was fueled by DOJ refusing to enforce this statute. Now, it's not an accident that DOJ refused to enforce this statute. The U.S. Marshals gave a presentation. The General Counsel's Office of the U.S. Marshals, if you look at one of the pages from that presentation, the General Counsel's Office stated the goals of the Residential and Personal Protection Mission: keep SCOTUS justices and their family free from physical harm, do not interfere with lawful First Amendment protected activity, avoid, unless absolutely necessary, criminal enforcement actions involving the protesters, particularly on public space, and making arrests and initiating prosecutions is not the goal of the Marshals' presence at SCOTUS residences. Are you familiar with this presentation?
Call your cable company and cancel your subscription. This new groundbreaking discovery gives you access to your favorite channels and movies for free. And greedy cable companies are their hardest to...
That's the point, man.
This presentation?
I am. I'm familiar with the fact that the U.S. Marshal Service Director has been explicit, has been clear that the Attorney General has repeatedly directed him to enforce all federal laws, including 1507, and that his number 1 priority, and that of his many deputies assigned to a 24/7 security presence, is to protect the life, the safety, the property of the justices.
Did you or anyone from the DAG's office meet with the U.S. Marshal Service and discuss Section 1507?
I regularly meet with the Director of the Marshal Service, the
And
Attorney
did you
General.
discuss 1507?
I discussed the Attorney General has been quite clear, and I have been quite clear with the Director of the Marshal Service.
She's lying.
Are you familiar with this presentation?
I've seen those slides, if they're the ones that Senator Britt presented to the Attorney General. But I want to be quite clear, Senator, about the direction given to the Marshal Service through the Director of the Marshal Service. He has been clear that the Attorney General directed him repeatedly to enforce all federal laws, to
With
make
respect,
his
Ms.
number
Monica,
one
that is
priority.
demonstrably false, because this is written instruction. Making arrests and initiating prosecution is not the goal. That's not an instruction to enforce the law. That is exactly the opposite. It is 180 degrees. It is instructing them. It is not the goal to arrest anybody, despite the fact that the criminal statute said they shall be imprisoned. You made a political decision, Merrick Garland made a political decision, that because you agree with the protesters, you don't like the decision the Supreme Court justices made, the marshals were instructed, don't arrest anyone and don't enforce federal law. Isn't that correct?
That is not correct, because the Attorney General and I and the Marshal Service Director are so concerned about potential threats to the justices. The Attorney General directed in an unprecedented step, 24/7.
That's what this says in writing.
24/7.
What does this say in writing?
I don't have the right glasses on for that, but Senator, the Attorney General was very clear with the Director of the Marshal Service, and the Marshal Service Director has said the same thing.
The word not is even underlined.
The number one priority given to the Marshal Service for their unprecedented protection detail for the Supreme Court justices is to protect their life, their
But
safety,
to
and
ignore
their property.
1507,
To protect their life,
to
their
ignore
safety.
federal criminal law.
Respectfully disagree with that characterization.
That's what the written instruction says. Not is underlined. Do not make arrests. Do not initiate prosecutions. Up is not down.
The Director of the Marshal Service has been very clear. The Attorney General directed him to enforce all federal laws, but that his number one priority is to ensure the safety.
Ms. Monica,
and the
what you're
protection.
saying is objectively false.
Time of the senator has expired. There are no further members to ask in the 5-minute round, and we're going to conclude the hearing. I want to thank the Deputy Attorney General for being present. I would like to make
Loose denture.
Here's another one coming in that, you know, we see this brother watch this brother here rock Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, done Phil. Watch this brother here rock her brain. Go to work on it. Go to work on
Mr.
it.
Chairman, sorry. Mayor Bowser, good to see you. Chief Conti, it's been a while. You haven't been back for 2 years or so. It's good to see you. Mr. Donahue, first time. Mr. Graves, bro, you need to do your job. I mean, let's just be very clear. You know, obviously, you have a responsibility to the resident.
This is Brian, I think his name is Brian Donald. I think Mr. Donald is his name. It's a brother. He's up in Congress, you know what I'm saying? He's doing his thing, and he's dropping that smoke and that fire. We need to look after this brother and make sure nothing happens to him as he brings that smoke and that fire to the table. So, without further ado, let Mr. Donald speak for himself.
So the district, in a myriad of ways. I think, you know, my colleague talked about that in some heavy detail there. But if you're not going to do the job of actually standing behind Chief Conti and the work that his men and women do with the Metropolitan Police Department, then you're selling them down the river, and with them, the residents of DC, and even the tourists that come to DC. But, you know, they're the ones that live here. They ride the bus, they get on the metro, they're going to school, they're going to work, and what everybody wants is just to be safe. And you're not holding up your end of the bargain. I've seen MPD all over DC. They're out here every single day. They are here. It's very clear when they're on the scene. But you're not doing your job. So I just find it to be disgusting, frankly. Just uphold the law, enforce the law. And that actually will make the job easier for the chief and for the mayor to do their jobs. Mayor Bowser, real quick, when the oversight committee was investigating January 6th, you were not here. I don't know what was going on, so no need to go down that road. But I really had a question about, you requested troops on you requested National Guard troops on December 31, 2020. Is that correct?
That sounds right, but I would want to confirm the date.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Based upon any recollection that you have, what was the rationale for requesting National Guard troops?
We wanted to make sure that our city blocks were protected, and the chief decided.
She's lying.
We were in that transition week.
She's lying.
So the chiefs decided that we wanted to create a traffic box around certain parts of our downtown.
She's lying.
And the best.
This is, I think, Washington, D.C. I think it's Mayor Bowser or whatever her name is. I think it's Mayor Bowser or something like that. But this is her line, and she's basically ignorant. And this is why they put black faces in certain positions as well, such as Fannie Will and Alan K.S. Braggs. And then you have Jack Smith, who's a white boy, but you know what I'm saying? Most of the charges and the strength of the charges to discredit Donald Trump is niggers. One of you sell out, Ku Klux Klan having, Biden flunkies, and criminality. And bringing that down on Donald J. Trump is a start. This could be any president that they don't like. Has nothing to do with Donald Trump in or with, but it has a lot to do with the presidency and getting a presidency intact. Meanwhile, they got a contingency plan to pump juice in everybody, and if it don't happen the way and once they get that certain glue, they're gonna release the gas under that airport and probably under all the ground they've been drilling for years, putting these canisters, and they're probably gonna release nice and slow. So we need to investigate that and get upon it. But listen to Mrs. Bowles or whatever her name is while Brian Donald, rack her brain.
Use of resources would be National Guard instead of MPD, so that MPD could be available for law enforcement. So that was our request.
Okay, so quick follow-up to that, because, I remember it, having gone through orientation here before I got sworn in as a member of Congress, that during that time period, to the pandemic and everything else, there was no traffic in D.C., not like it is today. Like, nobody was driving through the streets of D.C. during that time period. So, and this is a legitimate question, was the concerns purely traffic corridors in the district for the date of January 6th?
Let me ask the chief to talk about how we.
Sure, Chief Conte, if you can, that'd be great.
Yeah, so traffic is part of the concern. Certainly when we create traffic boxes and we're expecting a lot of people in our city, we don't want to mix people and cars. So creating that space where for people who are expressing their First Amendment rights could peacefully be in the street or on the sidewalk or whatever, and not be hindered by cars and buses moving about.
Well, Chief, I just want to reclaim my time. I'm a minute 28. There's no disrespect to what you're saying. And my coughing, no disrespect to either.
No worries.
So real quick, now in a letter that was sent on January 5th, Mayor Bowser, you stated that the National Guard, that you were accepting the support, but you wanted them to be in an unarmed capacity. Is that correct? Or Chief Conte, can you corroborate that? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, and I thank you for that. These are some of the things that we just want to clarify. And I think here's the overarching point. And to be frank, honestly, Mayor Bowser, this really ain't got nothing to do with you. I think this is just a general point of what happened, when, and why. And I think, actually, last question for you. When your request for National Guard troops obviously they were answered and you were given whatever you needed. Is that correct?
We were given, I believe, some of what we requested.
Okay. Were there any limits that came from the Secretary of the Army?
Yes.
Okay, can anybody stipulate what that was?
Yeah, a couple of things. So we wanted, well, first of all, the limitation was, we could not change their assignments without first receiving, approval from the Secretary of the Army. We could not move National Guard, members, anywhere east of 9th Street Northwest. We couldn't move them there. And another thing we wanted was a quick reaction, force members of the National Guard to be able to respond. I don't think we received that resource either.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Last point I'll make, Mr. Chairman, and I know I'm slightly over my time. One thing that was clear in previous testimony in this committee, corroborated by this testimony today, is that, troops from National Guard were authorized by the president at the time, Donald Trump, on January 4. They were authorized. It was testified in this committee they were authorized. DC was able to take advantage of them in the capacity that DC wanted to save for the couple of requests that you also wanted. One thing it's important to indicate, Mr. Chairman, is that for National Guard troops to be deployed to the Capitol, it requires the Capitol Police Board to actually issue a state of emergency for troops to come on Capitol grounds. And the police board is made up of the architect of the Capitol, the head of Senate Security, the head of House Security, and the chief of the Capitol Police. And by my understanding, 3 of those 4 people report to the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House at that time was Nancy Pelosi. So when we want to talk about National Guard being here and the timetable of them getting here, it's important to understand that there were National Guard in the District of Columbia, and their limitation of coming to the Capitol was not due to anybody else, because the president is not authorized to deploy troops to the Capitol, separation of powers. It is at the hands of the Speaker of the House. And with that, I yield, and I apologize for being 1:24 over.
Chairman,
Told you. Nancy Pelosi doesn't say. Demon Democrat blood sucking idiot.
gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Session from Texas for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Mr. Comer, Chairman Comer, I want to thank you for your not only meeting with at least Republicans before this hearing, but expressing your confidence that you believe that we could have a thoughtful meeting today with the representatives that would be here, and that the words of confidence that you spoke with the mayor about her job and how this committee could thoughtfully have a conversation today. It's my hope we will continue to have that conversation. I recognize you've been here a number of hours, each of you, and thank you. Some of the points that we've heard is that people on our side, where Republicans don't care about Washington, D.C., that we don't take time to come and walk the streets and talk to people. Well, perhaps there could be some evidence of that, but also my parents for over 20 years lived here, and my mother and my father both engaged Washington, D.C. elected officials, and I believe tried to provide feedback, and they did to my parents, and I was a part of those conversations. And I would like to say that there is great confidence that we want to have in working with you. And I think that's evidenced by you being here today. Mayor, I serve as the subcommittee chairman for government operations. And we have been in discussions and intend to have conversations with the federal government about bringing people back to work. I don't need to go through the facts of the case today, but the bottom line is the federal government is lagging, in our opinion, of getting people back to work. Back to work is, I think, not just healthy, but we have so many problems with passports and government, the IRS, a lot of other agencies in performance of their duties that are necessary to the American people. So we will be doing that. I want to just perhaps provide some context. We have just come off being in the minority for 4 years. We had an opportunity when we were in the minority to help work and craft. Our colleagues sometimes led us and sometimes shared, sometimes did not share so well. But the agenda was definitely on the side of the Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, and those who would be chairman of the committees. Their agenda is virtually our agenda today. That is that we're trying to make sure that the city of Washington, D.C. has a relationship with us whereby we provide feedback and we try and look at the things that are done. Together, we do recognize running a city is hard. We do recognize, however, or believe that just like the bipartisan piece of legislation that we did where we disagreed with the DC City Council could not have come at a worse time based upon the assault on one of our members. And that created an era of lawlessness in this city. Please know this, we would like to work with you. However, we'd like for you to have an equal knowledge that marijuana in its simplest form is an addictive problem. And your members, DC members, and your people who are in your police force and others should recognize that there are things being mixed in marijuana, there are hallucinogens, there are problems that we have, and you're gonna keep having violent crime if you keep having the positions that you take on allowing marijuana to be openly smoked, because it is easily infiltrated, so to speak. It can be changed, but it all by itself is an addictive, dangerous product. And there is more than enough national information out here. It creates a psychosis. It creates a lot of real problems. Who are the losers in this? Women and children. Women and children get the brunt of this problem. And I would like to just face all four of you and say, you need to tell the truth. You need to tell people the truth because they know it. And you will keep being a drug haven, a crime haven, and a gun haven if you continue how you approach drugs in the city of Washington, D.C. I'm very open to allowing you, you don't have to do it this forum, but that engagement, and expect it to come from the Government Operations Subcommittee, the engagement on public safety and the safety of women and children. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for the time. I know I'm over. My special thanks to all four of you for taking time to respectfully, thoughtfully take time to articulate your ideas with a group of people who care about you. I yield back my time. Gentleman yields back.
Oh, yeah. You see? We know why you put the marijuana out there. They ain't fooling nobody with that. You know what I'm saying? That we know, excuse me, Nancy Pelosi was in charge of what went on at the White House. This is why she delayed it. She delayed it because she knew well who was instigating the crowd up the White House was her cronies, the FBI, probably the DOJ, Homeland Security, probably even the CIA. All was involved in gathering to the point where they took over from Black Lives Matter and drove it forward to the White House. The delay proves that it was a scheme in itself. You just heard my man say that. Okay? The whole delay was based on that. They knew well what was going on based on Black Lives Matter and each of the clowns out in the street. They knew the smash and grab would be something that people would see as our world completely gone chaotically, such as what you would see in, chaos, or seeing, what do you call it again? Chaos and anarchy, when society break down, and basically only the strong sometimes will survive. But even in that case, it was still a complete anarchy in itself. And then you have the other intricacies to go with it: water, food, hospitalized, hospital medicines, all that now is at risk of chaoticity based on who is in bed with these beasts in our country, trying to take over our country from underground. China, you know what I'm saying? The Arabs, and all these other people. But we're going to take a look at this one as we rock it out.
That's why they're after you, Mr. Attorney General. 15 months ago, April 10th, 2019, in a Senate spying. That one word, that's why they're after you, Mr. Attorney General. 15 months ago.
This is Jim Jordan destroying Obama after Barr confirmed Clinton spying against Trump.
April 10th, 2019, in a Senate hearing, you said this sentence, quote, I think spying. That one word, that's why they're after you, Mr. Attorney General. 15 months ago, April 10th, 2019, in a Senate hearing, you said this sentence, quote, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. Spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It sure is. And since that day, when you had the courage to state the truth, they attacked you. They've been attacking you ever since, every day, every week, for simply stating the truth that the Obama-Biden administration spied on the Trump campaign. 1 year ago, New York Times headline said this, 1 year ago, quote, FBI sent investigator posing as assistant to meet with Trump aide in 2016. The FBI sent a young lady who used the name Azra Turk to meet Papadopoulos in September of 2016. They sent someone pretending to be someone else to meet a person associated with the Trump campaign. You know what they call that? You know what they call that? Spying. 1 month later, October 2016, they used the dossier to spy on Carter Page. The salacious, unverified dossier, Jim Comey's words, not mine. They took it to the FISA court, didn't tell the courts that the Clintons paid for it, didn't tell the court that the guy who wrote the document, Christopher Steele, had already communicated to the Justice Department that he was, quote, desperate to stop Trump from getting elected. And guess what? There were 15 more lies that they told the court.
Now, this is Jim Jordan dropping it on William Bill Barr, whatever, him, Obama, and all the rest of their crooked ass Clinton and them. This is Jim Jordan cracking them in the head all around the board. Bill Barr, they're looking like a big fat kid that needs some cake. You know what I mean? You don't know what to do.
17 in total. They're outlined by the Inspector General, each and every one of them in his 400-page report. But guess what? Chairman Nadler refuses to allow Mr. Horowitz to come here and testify and answer our questions about the 17 lies the Obama-Biden administration told to the secret court. The Obama-Biden DOJ opened the investigation in July. They used a secret agent lady to spy on Papadopoulos in August. They lied to the FISA court in September. And they did all this without any basis for launching the investigation to begin with. How do we know that? How do we know there was no basis? They told us. Now, they didn't want to tell us, but thanks to Rick Grenell, who released the transcripts of their testimony, we now know there was no basis for them to start the investigation in the first place. Sally Yates, Rhodes, Samantha Power, Susan Rice. Here's what Susan Rice says. I don't recall intelligence I would consider evidence of a conspiracy. How about James Clapper? I never saw any direct evidence that the Trump campaign or someone in it was conspiring with the Russians to meddle with the election. Say that again. I never saw evidence that the Trump campaign was conspiring, and yet they investigate him. There was never a proper predicate. So why'd they do it? There was no reason to do it. Why'd they do it? They told us that too. Peter Strzok, August 2016, asked, is Trump going to win? What's his response? Remember, this is Peter Strzok. This is the guy who ran the investigation. No, he's not. We'll stop it. August, Peter Strzok says we'll stop Trump. September, they spy on Papadopoulos. October, they use the fake dossier to lie to the court. But guess what happens in November? Guess what happens in November? November 8th, 2016, wow. The American people get in their way. 63 million of them, to be exact. Now everything changes. Now the real focus is, wow, wait a minute, we didn't stop him. He won. Now what do they have to do? They have to do the cover-up. And who do they have to go after? Who's target number one in their cover-up? The former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the guy who's about to become National Security Advisor to the President of the United States, Michael Flynn. They can't have him hanging around because he'll figure it out. So they decide to go after Michael Flynn, 3-star general, served our country for over 3 decades. And we know they went after him because they told us that too. Bill Priestep, head of counterintelligence at the FBI, the day they interview Flynn, January 24th, 2017, his notes say what? What's our goal? To get Flynn to lie so we can prosecute him, or to get him fired? Think about what the Obama, Biden, DOJ, what their administration did in the last month. Last month they were in power. January 4th, the agents investigating Flynn want to drop the case. Comey tells them no. January 5th, they have the now famous meeting in the Oval Office. Obama, Biden, Rice, Comey, all of them are in there. They're plotting their strategy, how they're going to get Flynn. January 6th, Comey goes up to Trump Tower, briefs President-elect Trump on the dossier that they already know is false, just so they can leak it to the press, and the press will write the story that they briefed the president on the dossier. And then, of course, January 24th, the day they go set up Michael Flynn in his interview. Guess what else they did? Guess what else they did between Election Day and Inauguration Day? That 2-month time, guess what else they did? 38 people, 49 times unmasked Michael Flynn's name. Comey, Clapper, Brennan Biden, 7 people at the Treasury Department unmasked Michael Flynn's name, for goodness sake. And of course, Flynn resigns on February 13th. Flynn resigns on February 13th. Now the cover-up is complete. Flynn's gone. Everything's fine, they think, until May 9th, 2017, when President Trump fires Jim Comey. Now they got a problem again. The guy who was going to keep it all quiet, he's been fired. Now how they continue the cover-up? Real simple. Jim Comey leaks his memos with the express purpose of getting a special counsel appointed to investigate something they already know is not true. And that's exactly what happened. We get 2 years, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, 500 witnesses, 2,800 subpoenas, and a $30 million cost to the taxpayer, and they come back with nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so all they got left is to attack the Attorney General, who had the courage to state the truth right from the get-go. The first time he testifies after he's confirmed. You guys attack him every day, every week, and now you filed articles of impeachment against him. It's ridiculous. He had the courage to do what no one else would do at the Justice Department. Sally Yates wouldn't call it spying. Jeff Sessions wouldn't do it. Rod Rosenstein wouldn't do it. Chris Wray sure as heck isn't going to do it. So, Mr. Attorney General, I want to thank you for having the courage to call it what it was, spying. I want to thank you for having the courage to say we're going to get the politics out of the Department of Justice that was there in the previous administration. And maybe most importantly, and we're going to talk about this in our side on questioning, I want to thank you for defending law enforcement, for pointing out what a crazy idea this defund the police policy, whatever you want to call it, is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Attorney General Barr. Wow. I'm beginning to believe, frankly, that you're probably that just hadn't come out yet, probably will a little bit. You're probably the cause of the common cold and, and possibly even the COVID-19. I'm not sure at this point because everything's been thrown at you, including now, undoubtedly, your alma mater doesn't like you anymore. Where have we come? The chairman said something earlier today that really made me think. He said, why all the drama? That's the most ironic statement coming from this committee in the last 18 months that I've ever heard of. The drama that we're bringing up today. We're seeming to just contort ourselves to get to some way to show that you have a nefarious motive. I believe, like some of our side here, I believe the biggest problem you have is telling the truth. I believe that's the problem that they have with you. You'll tell the truth and you'll take the responsibility for your actions, and I think that's why you're being attacked. But I want to continue just on this, quote, peaceful protest for a second. You made a comment just a second ago on these rights. Talking about the courthouses just down the street, what if they decided, do you think that this body right here would rise up if they decided to go tonight and paint the Capitol building?
This body, I'm not sure.
I think this side would, I'm not sure. This other side, I'm not so sure. It may be the peaceful protest to burn down the Capitol. Maybe we're back to 1812 again. But also, the other question I have is, and you've heard it earlier today, the stormtrooper comments by the Speaker of the House. And we know that that is a direct reference to the paramilitary wing of the Nazi Party, stormtroopers going at it. Do you believe that that actually puts our law enforcement community at a whole? As a son of a state trooper, I want to know your opinion. Don't you think it encourages the violence that we're seeing and encourages the participation against the police?
I think that's possible, and I think it's irresponsible to call these federal law enforcement officers stormtroopers.
Yeah, and we're seeing that thing played out over and over. Let's switch back to something else, though, that is I think more appealing here. We've talked about the investigations and especially going with Flynn. Do you believe that there was actually a basis to go after General Flynn? I mean, what we've seen so far, what's been released, and especially keeping an investigation open, Peter Strzok kept it open. Do you believe there's actually a basis for the beginning of this investigation to start with, or continuing it?
Well, I would just say, I asked another U.S. attorney